So Isaac, welcome to our podcast, our Snap, Crackle and Pod podcast for Snap Analytics. It's great to have you here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So Dr. Isaac Ben Akiva, talk to me a little bit about your incredible background and career.
Wow, that is interesting. It's gonna take a long time. Anyway, yes, I have almost 30 years, or a little bit more, in fact, in 30 years within technology, specifically software development. Right, my background is in computer science. I have a degree in computer science, physics, mathematics, and a PhD in artificial intelligence from the University of Toronto. So I've been doing software development for a great part of these 30 years. That, without including that, I wrote my first program when I was 12 years old. So that would get a little bit more in the 40s, 40 years working in technology or writing software code. Data specifically, right? We needed to, if you go back, 30 years ago, data, we are talking about what to put in, bits and bytes within a database, right, to hold that information. So I did that for a few years, was an Oracle, database administrator, in the past, and developing always applications, solutions for enterprise using, data as a component of it. When I decided to do artificial intelligence, which, back in the 90s wasn't a topic at all, that has to do exactly with the years that I spent developing software with an objective of how can we manage knowledge, right? In the 80s and 90s, if you go back to that, we can need to think in a little bit the evolution or revolution, so to speak, that many enterprises were going that in that period in trying to become a knowledge enterprise, right? It was at that time, I think Peter Seger, if I'm not wrong, if I'm not mistaken about his name, that created the term intellectual capital. You start thinking of knowledge workers. So, at that time, for the business, the organization that I was working, we were thinking, okay, how can we become that knowledge organization?
I guess it was a similar time to sort of Bill Inman came and started talking about the idea of the data warehouse as well, right? To actually, how can we start to capture all of that knowledge and data within a business? That's when data started to really start to become of interest. And I think it's interesting you say AI wasn't really a thing. I guess back when you started your journey, machine learning was really almost an academic discipline. And I think, fast forward, almost 25, 30 years, everybody's talking about AI. So I guess you've, what was it way back then that kind of inspired you in terms of, why did you choose the direction of machine learning? What was it that interested you?
Yeah, it was exactly that, a topic of knowledge management, right, and of knowledge organizations. The whole idea that I had at that time, and I was working a project for my organization, it was how can we, first, transform knowledge from tacit knowledge to a more concrete knowledge, right? So let me get knowledge from people's head, right? Absorb that knowledge, store that knowledge somewhere, that turn out to be a database, right? And how do we make that available, to others to consume, so that when someone goes out of the business, right, people quit organizations. So you need to be able to observe that knowledge that is intrinsic part of the organization and make it shareable. So that how everything started for me. So I was very much in the 90s into knowledge management and, creating ontologies and so on. And I had this idea that how could we help, at the time I was working for BAT, how could we help the organization better create a better succession plan or career plan for the executives of it? How can we get the best people in the right positions, and the ones that still need some, additional experience or knowledge? How can we create then that career path where they can gain that, experience, and then later on be put in the right position? So that was dealing a lot with unstructured data, right? You need a lot of, at that time, you used to call it text analysis, right? So today you can call it natural language processing, right? So obviously it was an evolution of text analysis. And that what enticed me. How can I then start automating this? How can I use predictive modeling on top of, this data that I'm extracting to help me then identify X is better for position X squared and Y, is better for position P or whatever, right? So that was when I said, I want to study artificial intelligence and see the art of possible in there. And one of the places that had back in 1997, it was the University of Toronto. And this was interesting. As I said, I was in business and went to to study a PhD. And my supervisor at that time asked me, do you intend to stay in academia? Because there's no job out there for artificial intelligence.
It's incredible, isn't it, to think that back then there was no jobs in artificial intelligence. Now almost every job, involves, partially, certainly data or AI in some shape or form. And what I'm seeing now is almost everyone seems to be an expert in AI, right? There's the LinkedIn post, how to make your AI project a success. So how important is that sort of deep expertise today to be able to really unlock and also make sure that we're dealing with AI, I guess, in a way that is ethical, in a way that is scalable, in a way that we can actually really use in a I guess compliant and governed way in organizations, because, whilst there are lots of people getting upskilled or simply just claiming to be experts, there are a lot of risks, aren't there? And there are a lot of, I guess, considerations before implementing AI in an organization. So how important is that expertise?
Yeah, this, David, is a very interesting question, in fact, because there are many ramifications for it. It's not simply say, is a technology aspect, right? Let's learn the technology, let's do it, and so on. We are still grasping with the idea that AI is starting having, but will have even a deeper impact in society. There will be some job losses because, they can be automated easily by AI, right? So yeah, it's just touching specifically in that part of the question of how important, knowing what you're doing, right? Become an expert in the subject. It is. I would answer that, yes, definitely is very important, right? To have people well skilled that understand, what type of algorithm to use, what type of models to use it for different type of problems, how to evaluate, and if that model is really, producing the results that you expect. So having that deep knowledge, of machine learning, right? Understand the mathematics behind it to be able to validate what you got. It's very important. Now, and maybe, however, right, as we see in any technology, you have a very steep starting of it, right? You're going to need really very precise or qualified, type of knowledge, right? That needs to put a lot of efforts to learn that. And later on, that technology starts to become easier for the later adopters or even, like people that want to specialize in it, because you start seeing, as we see with many programming languages, right, that you can almost no code using, these drags and drops, or let's create a much higher level programming language, so you don't need to deal with how do I allocate memory, or deallocate memory, all this kind of things, right? That if you're going to program in C, you're going to have to deal with. And if you program in Python or in Java, you don't need to worry about that at all, because the programming language does for you. So in terms of AI, in terms of machine learning, we are starting seeing this trend, right, of no-code solutions. Right, and with the inception of generative AI, that I think that we're going to start happening even faster, because you can have copilots in there.
So the idea of being able to ask questions with kind of natural language, I guess there are things like being able to sort of, I guess, summarize text, and one of our partners, Matillion, as we were talking to earlier in the week, has a capability to be able to sort of, I guess, enrich data by sort of using natural language and ask those kind of questions. I guess it depends on the use case, doesn't it? That the answer to the question around expertise is, hey, look, if you're working with personal data, if you're using this to drive key strategic decisions, and you need to ensure it's completely accurate, because I guess this could go wrong, right? If AI gives you the wrong answer and you don't understand it. Have you seen any examples or scenarios where that has gone wrong and resulted in a poor outcome?
Well, I wouldn't say personally, because and that is part of answering your questions of expertise versus quick learn. Watching a video on YouTube, let me do it. When you really specialize in the field, know what you're doing, you're gonna use all the safeguards that you can to get a project out there, right? And especially when it is a organizational level project. If it's a do-it-yourself, for me, my website, put in here, put in there, is a different case. Now, when you're working within a bank, you're working in military or pharmaceutical and so on, you, first of all, as a business, you're going to make sure that you're hiring people highly qualified to do the job, right? You're going to have processes in place for any solution that you develop. Before it really hits production, it needs to pass through, a thorough process of quality assurance. So that's and start, filtering the bad results for you, right? The results, bad results, that I think we have some examples, in the market from big companies that tried to rush out some solutions, exciting solutions with AI, and got things really wrong, right? An example, Microsoft with, how was it called? TIE, right? The chatbot that, self-learning, learning from interactions within people, and yes, you're gonna learn bad things, and suddenly, the chatbot was uttering all kind of undesirable, answers in there. So that is one point when you rush things, and look at that was done not by amateur. It was a company that we all trust, right? That putting good products out there.
I think there was a similar example with DPD, the postal company.
Yes.
And where I just saw this on social media, and it said the chatbot couldn't tell me where my parcel was or anything about my delivery, but it was able to tell me a joke. So it's that example where actually a chatbot for the sake of a chatbot isn't actually that useful.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and again, that could, there are many reasons why that could have failed, right? We could argue here that failed, because probably they didn't hire the right workforce to do that, or the right consulting company to do their work. But also it could be the choice of technology by itself, right? You need to think when you are dealing specifically with customers, you want it to be precise in your responses. You don't want the responses to be generated by an algorithm that, frankly speaking, you don't know what's gonna come out. The maximum you can do is guardrail in that create guardrails around that. You can filter, you can, before uttering the response to the user, you can say, that's not good enough, right? If you put the right safeguards around, ask that algorithm to regenerate the answer, passing some specific, instructions to it, and then you get a better answer, and they say, okay, now I can go out. In the past, how we used to do chatbots, right? You had precise answer, saved in your database that the chatbot would read from there. Basically, what the chatbot would do, I needed to understand the question. So you have machine learning, you have natural language processing in that aspect, so you could understand the intent of the user, then it would retrieve the answer, pre-recorded answer from someone else, so you're safe in the sense that what am I answering, right, for replying to my customer. Whereas when you use a generative, text and algorithm to generate an answer for you, you are really playing with a randomness there. Anything can come.
So how do you sort of protect from that? Because Gen AI is sort of going at sort of breakneck speed now,
yes.
and there's lots of Gen AI solutions being released. What's the answer to that problem? Are there some ways that you can sort of put guardrails around that to make sure that those answers aren't undesirable or have inherent bias in them or anything like that?
Yes. Everything, starts really with your source data, right? How you train it at foundation model, right? Which data you use for it, so it can generate the proper answer for it. So there are really a plethora of techniques that you can use to ensure that, and from really fine-tuning the foundation model to using retrieval augmented generation, right? And so you have a secondary, so to speak, database, right, and a vector database where you're gonna retrieve information based on the user's prompt, the user questions, retrieve additional information, pass that information as a context to get together with the question to the foundation model, the LLM, which then will generate an answer. And then you can ask the LLM, right, depending on the way that you set up it, right, how you're orchestrating that solution. You can get, okay, give him the top, let's say, K answer, 10 answers, 5 answers, whatever, and you analyze that, pass that through different models, or even depending on the use case, can be even a user in the loop, right, a human in the loop, to validate that answer. Then you use that to maybe retrain your Naive model, or store that in your RAG. That's going to help you improve, over time, better and better your answers. And then another thing you can do is put really some software, a piece of software to help you with your guardrail. An example is a Nemo guardrail, right? And an NVIDIA software that can help you with different aspects of security within your LLM. Right, and security, I mean language, right? Is the LLM, issuing any harmful language? There is, bias in the answer, and a few other things, hallucinations that you can do. So yeah, you can do, a lot today with, the technology that we have with foundation models, and start getting, chatbots that is capable of generating a answer within a context. That's very important for you to limit the context where that solution is operating. If you have a generic one capable of observing, more and more, right, and you didn't put also any guardrail to the type of questions that the user can ask, right, then I can potentially jailbreak the prompt to make the LLM, answer things that you hadn't, thought of.
And it's going to be really interesting, I think, to see how this plays out, because I think there are, as I say, everyone's an AI expert now. It's easy to build a chatbot, but actually to build one within the constraints and having that, the thinking about all those considerations and knowing how to solve that problem, I think that does require a deeper expertise. some experience of having done it before, right?
Absolutely. Let me make a comparison here as maybe a metaphor. It's interesting, right? It's everyone plays football. Everyone is a professional player, understanding everything.
Hey, I've been watching the England games, and I know exactly what formation works best, better than Gareth Southgate for sure.
Exactly. So it's the same thing. There are lots of players there, but you have the professionals players. So yeah, if you want a Sunday game, fantastic. Go and play with and pick up any of those players, maybe from your college, neighborhood, whatever. But if you want really a high quality, entertainment game, you're going to go and watch the professionals, right?
Absolutely.
And the same thing for an AI solution. There are lots of people that, I understand an AI, I did 1 or 2 courses here, or even just watching YouTube. You can create some solutions for, a small business or something, I'm not arguing that in aspect because, self-learn is not a problem at all. It's just understand what level you are for which type of solutions you're trying to generate. Sometimes, the solution that you think that is easy is really beyond your level of current knowledge. So that's where you need to have someone that, has, more years of experience, has maybe a formal education in that field, and has proved, him or herself to be a good professional, right, over the years.
Absolutely. And I think that training, that people upskilling, I think that should definitely, we should celebrate that, we should encourage that. But I think, in those big enterprise scenarios where you do need something that is well governed, highly compliant,
yes.
I think, having that depth and experience is really important. For those listeners that don't sort of have in-depth expertise or understanding of this space, there are lots of terms that get sort of thrown around. There's data science, there's machine learning, there's artificial intelligence. How would you sort of explain, I guess, just let's focus in on those 3. How would you differentiate between those? Because what I see is they're often used interchangeably.
Yes. I like it to represent or to explain those terms most of the times with, circles, right? Or better, I think everyone knows a Russian doll, right? So that we have one. So if we start with the most external one, the bigger one, I would say that is exactly artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a domain of study within computer science, right? Which the main concern is how can we develop intelligent systems that can mimic human intelligence. And the way that you develop those systems can be whatever way technology affords you to, right? And you can even use a lot of if-that else, if that. Obviously, that's not performance-wise efficient enough, right? But just to give you a sense that it's a broader term. I want, to preoccupy how can we create systems that, can mimic human intelligence, human cognition, it's capable of reasoning and so on. So machine learning, I would say, is a subfield of artificial intelligence. Machine learning specifically preoccupies itself with how can we, develop a system that can learn from past experience. And those past experience is exactly data, right? So, and you need to be capable of measuring that, right? That's why you say the past experience, does it increase the performance of the system over time? So that is, it's a metric that I can use to understand that the system is in fact learning from that past experience or from that data, right? And why I would say it's interchangeably used nowadays, artificial intelligence and machine learning, it is because artificial intelligence got where it is at the moment thanks to machine learning algorithm, right? Because with those algorithms, we're capable to develop systems that can make predictions with a very high level of accuracy, can classify things, and can see computer vision. You see them, an algorithm can get an image and tell you what the image is, right? What your object is in that image, and it can not only that, even more different objects in the same images, right? Nowadays can even get contextualization and describe that, thanks to generative AI, right? Describe that image in text and vice versa. So, and it's interesting now that point, because if I go further, given some keywords that people know, like deep learning, right? I would say that, thanks to deep learning, that computer vision is capable of doing that. Deep learning specifically is a subfield within machine learning, right? Who use neurons, try in certain aspects to emulate human, neurons. And you put in a bunch of those neurons together, and is capable to learning from a huge amount of data, which machine learning, the more traditional models in machine learning can't, crunch at all, because it's too much.
And I guess the pivotal point in that sort of deep learning, machine learning, sort of that exponential pace at which we're going now, is that largely down to the power of the compute and the scalability and performance of solutions in the cloud, for example?
No, definitely. The concept of deep learning, right? The concept of what we call artificial neural networks, right? It's quite old. If I'm not wrong, start really in the 60s. However, it didn't have the computer power, neither the amount of data necessary to put in a lot of these artificial neurons together, right, to create. That's why you have deep learning. You have, multi-layered with many, neurons in each layer. That's created the depth of it, right, the deep in the learning in there. And for that, you need really a huge computer power. Which nowadays work really on graphic, processing units, GPUs, right? And it was thanks to that an amount of computer power and the data that it started really picking up. It was when in 2012, when one of Geoffrey Hinton's students there in Toronto won the ImageNet competition with, what is called nowadays AlexNet. That was a deep learning architecture that he developed for computer vision, and could classify images almost as good as a human can. So yes, computer power and the amount of data were key elements for the development or advancement of artificial intelligence by itself.
Fantastic. So moving on to sort of, so let's imagine, I'm a CIO in a large global organization. One of the things I'm seeing in a lot of conversations I'm having are people saying, everyone's asking me about AI. Mm-hmm. What do I do about it? Where do I start? So where would you sort of begin with that conversation? Everyone wants to do something with AI. I see there's almost a fear of missing out. Historically, everything's been more rational. It's been, hey, we've got a business problem we need to solve. Here's some budget. Let's go and solve it. I'm seeing almost this, movement driven by, I need to do something because everyone else is doing something. Yeah. How do you, where would you begin that conversation?
Yeah, it's a very interesting that point, right? And the tendency is, pick up the low-hanging fruit project and execute that. But how many companies did that and at the end failed to really implement an AI at scale? Why? Because most of those low-hanging fruits problems, they aren't big enough to scale. There's a problem there. Yeah, you can develop a model that's gonna help you classify, maybe this text or maybe, extract the text from something or a chatbot or whatever. But when you think to, a larger problems in the organization, most of them don't scale, right? Yeah, and then you don't have the right environment in it, you don't have the right workforce, and you didn't build, you didn't adapt your business process, to that new piece of automation that you are putting, in place. So when someone comes that, the first thing that I would really say is, what is your strategy for that? Let's think about that first. What are the business results that you want to achieve, right? The overall goal, how are we going to touch the bottom line of your business? Will it help you increase your revenue, reducing your operational costs? So, and analyzing this, what is your data architecture at the moment? Do you have one? Your data platform, right? So those are key elements that needs to be tackled to then, develop a proper solution that will, scale, that you helping you deploy many and many models within your business.
So what I'm hearing is the worst thing you can do is kind of dive in and start building stuff. It's about change management. It's about have you got the right team, and making sure you've got that sort of governance and also the right data, I guess, because that's the other thing I guess you see a lot is where, and I know we've been talking with this about a specific use case only in the last week or two around this, where actually there is a business challenge to be solved, but actually the underlying data isn't of a quality or not sufficiently broad to be able to give you the most accurate insight. So
exactly, and that is where many businesses fail, because you see sometimes a much localized version of a problem, right, that looks simple to solve. But then when you start going into it, you say, oh, I needed these extra data here. Oh, that the data is in the other department. Oh, how do I get that data there? Who is the data owner? And it goes, over and over in terms of a problem. So obviously, there is different ways that you may look, of a problem. Could we start, some business have really my main problem currently. An example, one of business that are working in the past, one of the main problems that they had is the time that customers spent on the phone waiting to talk to a customer representative, right? That was over 40 minutes. How do we solve that? Should I, scale up my call center force, right? No, because most analyzing the problems there, when you start saying what is coming through, most of the problems were things that could be automated. My card is blocked. I want to check. I'm not being able to log into the app. My password, things like that. And the other was just really information. So that was a typical example that I could develop in a single spot, so to speak. I'm trying to look up here. My brain is my machine learning looking up what's the right word for that.
Data.
Right? It was a very specific application that, yes, if we develop, in this case, a chatbot that can, talk, even if we are dealing with, and that was one of the problems, we're going to be dealing with people that they are not tech savvy. So the chatbot couldn't be too complicated because they're going to start writing a history here, why they have that problem to say, yeah, this is the problem, right? So in that case, we start with a guided chatbot. You guided the user. You ask, what is your problem? You give a list of possible problems. They choose, okay, have you done this or things like that? And that simple chatbot reduces the waiting time, from over 40 minutes, to less than 1 minute.
Wow.
In the first hour of the chatbot were live, we had over 150,000 people, use the chatbot. Amazing. Right? So the point that they're trying to make here is, yes, there are situations where, okay, we need just really to put in a solution in place using AI. That solution, is this here. This is the biggest problem. This is how I'm going to measure if the solution is working. This is what I expect in terms of business results, right? In that case, it's reduce customer waiting time with the objective to increase customer satisfaction, because the NPS of the company was quite low because people always complain the same thing. I can't talk to anyone. This company is a ghost company. It doesn't exist. It's taking my money. It's this and that. So that increase the NPS, reduce the customer time, increase the customers, obviously the NPS, increase customer satisfaction overall. So that's the way you need to think. But if you're thinking in really, I want to adopt because everyone else is adopt, I don't think is the right way. You need to think, what is my strategy? Do I need to develop one strategy? Do I need to, update my data strategy, my technology strategy, which is because data AI is not only technology, it's a change management. It's involve how the company will do the process. And with AI, just one last point, with AI, you need really to think about your workforce as well. Either some, upskilling in some case, and the other case, you're going to really have to reduce your workforce because you're going to have a surplus of people that their jobs has been automated.
And I think there's a lot of talk right now, isn't there, around AI is gonna take our jobs. I think inevitably, my view is that will happen, and there's question marks around, is there going to be a universal basic income? How do you see that sort of playing out? What's the? I know we're going beyond the sort of technology a bit here, but what's the answer to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, we need, and that is a type of conversation that we definitely need to have, right? We need to start thinking beyond the technology, because AI has a much higher societal impact than any other kind of technology before, right? And when, I don't like to talk that much about this subject, but it's a risk that's in there, right? If you're thinking about creating the super intelligence that is talking there, right? The artificial general intelligence capable of, more intelligence than human beings, we need to think what would be the consequences of that, right? We know by ourselves that we are, by far the most intelligent creatures on the planet. And how many other creatures have we, brought to an end, right? Potentially even our own ancestors, Neanderthals, and was just eradicated by ourselves. So is that a risk for us, if you have? So leaving that philosophical question aside.
No, I mean, it's fascinating, right? Yeah. And it's an interesting, thought that we create something that is more intelligent than ourselves, right?
Yeah. And then if we bring it now to a more, let's say, urgent, point, is regarding, loss of jobs. Right? Should we have a universal income? Yes, that's conversation we need to have, because there are many jobs that will be replaced, some sooner than others. I, frankly speaking, do believe that even our jobs of software developers, AI solution developers, potentially going to be automated.
I reflect on this myself, because even data engineering, right? A lot of the work we do is data engineering or data visualization, right? Some of the solutions that are coming out now, you can say, hey, create me a marketing strategy based on my data. I saw that as a demo at the AWS event, and it goes and it says, hey, here's all of your marketing spend. Here were the results. Here's where you need to focus your time. If you did this, you might see more effective results. That would have been days and days of analysis for somebody, and creation of dashboards and so on and so forth. And AI was able to do it in seconds. So I think, it's almost inevitable. And I think AI is going to touch every industry. I think when it was the industrial revolution kind of automated, a lot of those manual things that we would have done. I think now we're going to see a lot the services industry be massively disrupted, from creatives through to the legal profession. Those highly skilled, I think a really positive one is actually healthcare. I think AI can do some amazing things in terms of detecting cancer and things like that. So I think, there's a huge potential benefit, but there's also that downside. And I do wonder whether governments are really ready for it and aware of the pace at which change is coming. I'm fully against fear mongering. I'm always saying, I always think, well, it's going to take much longer than everyone thinks. But I actually think on this one, I think it's going to come up, it's going to fall upon us pretty rapidly. I mean, you look at OpenAI, all of a sudden, I don't know when it was released, but it wasn't that long ago. And all of a sudden, Gen AI is being adopted everywhere. So I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen quickly. It's inevitably going to affect jobs, and it will change our society. So I think it's something that we should be discussing. It's not nice to discuss. It's
exactly.
Those downsides, but I think I do find it fascinating how we're gonna be able to mitigate some of those
exactly.
risks.
So it's not really a fear mongering, right? It's really plan for the worst and hope for the best, right? We needed to plan because those changes will occur. So if you just react to them, the consequences will be much worse than if we really start planning for them now. How can we make, for example, a graduate and upskilling, right, of the workforce, right? Start thinking what type of jobs will be the first ones really to go, and what can we do in that? So having a universal salary or whatever, how that would pay up, how that would, so it's very important in society to start, thinking, planning. Governments, really put an effort in that, and and the other aspects of AI which they are doing, right? Like regulations, we have the EU AI Act that's in helping in that aspect, and of AI harm to people, right? And different types of harm, right? And sometimes not really physical, but in harm, how you can live well with your life, right? So that's very good things to work on, to put in place for the development of a responsible AI, but we needed to go beyond that. We really needed to start thinking, humans going to have to behave a different way because, some of the jobs are going to be done by algorithm, by computers.
Fascinating. It's probably not one we're going to solve here and now, but no. It's a topic I totally agree. I think we need to address it. I've got my plan, Isaac. So when data engineering is all automated and data visualization and when the AIs are creating themselves, my plan is to go and practice and become proficient at golf. I know you're an avid golfer yourself, so I'm going to leave you with this final question: what do you love more, golf or data?
That's a good question. I love both very much, right? It's an interesting relationship. I focus in data, thinking when I'm going to play golf. And when I'm playing golf, I think, okay, how can I use the data to help me become better in what I'm doing? Fantastic. So it comes together.
Harmonious relationship. I love that. Well, I think it's been a fascinating conversation, as I knew it would be. As I say, thank you so much for taking part in our podcast for Snap Analytics, Snap, Crackle and Pod, and thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Snap, Crackle and Pod podcast. Please click this button to subscribe on YouTube. You can also follow us on all major podcast platforms. We're Snap Analytics. We help organizations make sense of data. If you want to find out more, you can go to www.snapanalytics.co.uk. Thank you.